Hey everyone, today I'm going to show you how to paint realistic textures inside a donut. This donut is actually part of a much larger hyper-realistic still life painting that I've been working on for the past 5 months. I've intentionally left the right side unfinished so I can demonstrate my process and show you exactly how I approach these complex textures. Alright, let's get started. I begin by mixing burnt umber with a small amount of yellow ochre, and then I start laying in some of these darker lines. At this stage, I'm relying heavily on my reference photo. Rather than immediately focusing on all the tiny details, I start by looking for larger shapes and patterns that stand out. Next, I mix up a lighter yellow ochre mixture with just a touch of burnt umber and begin adding some of these lighter lines. I'm searching for major lines, clusters of texture, and distinctive landmarks that I can use as anchor points. These larger shapes help me map out the structure of the donut and establish accurate placement. Once these anchors are in place, it becomes much easier to judge where all the smaller textures belong. One of the biggest mistakes artists make when painting realism is trying to copy every little detail right away. Instead, I like to think of it as building a framework first. Once the larger forms are established, the smaller details naturally fall into place around them. I'll also begin placing a few small patches and irregular marks throughout the area. One thing you'll notice is that these shapes vary considerably in both size and appearance. Nature rarely repeats itself exactly, so variety is important. Now I mix a slightly lighter value and begin adding some of these lighter patches down here. At this stage, my primary goal is to establish the value structure. I'm identifying where the darker areas belong and how dark they need to be relative to one another. Not every shadow is created equal, and these subtle variations in value are what help create the illusion of depth and texture. There is another important principle I'd like to mention. When working on highly detailed paintings, it's critical to keep your focus localized to a small area. Avoid jumping around the painting from one section to another. That interruption can lead to mistakes and make it much more difficult to judge shapes, values, and edges correctly. Instead, I prefer to work methodically through one small section at a time. By staying focused on a localized area, I can maintain concentration and approach the painting with much greater precision. So now I'm taking some pure titanium white and placing the brightest highlights that I can find within the texture. At first glance, it might look like I'm using too much white, but don't worry about that. Once I begin layering additional colors and blending them together, much of this brightness will become integrated into the surrounding textures. Right now, I'm simply establishing the lightest values that exist in this area. Next, I switch to a mixture of burnt umber, yellow ochre, and titanium white, and carefully place it between some of the shapes I've already painted. Notice that I'm making a conscious effort not to overlap these color patches. Before I begin blending, I want all these individual shapes and colors to exist side by side. Think of them as small tiles in a mosaic. Once they're in place, I can begin connecting them through blending and edge control. This particular mixture is one of my most frequently used colors throughout the process. It's a fairly neutral middle value that helps bridge the gap between the darkest shadows and the brightest highlights. Even so, I'm not placing it everywhere. I'm intentionally leaving space for other colors and values that I'll be introducing later. Now I mix some burnt umber and yellow ochre and begin adding a few very small dark accents. When working with darker values, restraint is important. Dark colors have a tendency to dominate an area, especially once blending begins. A little bit often goes much further than you think, so it's usually better to add too little than too much. Next, I mix a warmer color using burnt sienna and yellow ochre and begin introducing some of those warmer notes into the texture. You could already start to see a greater variety of browns emerging across the surface. This variety is important because realistic textures are rarely composed of a single color. Even within a small area like this donut, there are subtle shifts in temperature, value, and saturation. As I continue building layers, these seemingly simple marks will combine to create increasingly complex and convincing textures. Now let's switch gears and begin blending. I clean my brushes thoroughly and make sure they're dry before returning to the painting. Using a clean brush, I begin very carefully softening some of the transitions where these colors meet. This brings up another important concept. Not everything should be blended. One of the most common mistakes artists make is overblending. If every edge is softened, the texture begins to lose its structure and clarity. Instead, I'm making decisions about which edges should remain sharp and which should become softer. In the donut texture, there are areas where light and dark values meet abruptly, creating crisp, well-defined edges. Those areas help communicate texture and structure, so I want to preserve them. Other areas contain incredibly subtle transitions, tiny shifts in value that happen gradually over a very small distance. In those passages, careful blending helps create the illusion of depth and realism. Ultimately, our goal is to study those relationships in the reference photo and reproduce them as accurately as possible. Hyperrealism isn't just about painting details. It's about observing how those details transition into one another and recreating those transitions with precision. At this stage, you're not going to be able to match every microscopic detail that appears in the reference photo. The goal right now is to develop an understanding of how these textures are organized and then create the illusion that thousands of tiny details exist within the surface. Remember, this isn't the final stage of the process anyways. Once this layer has dried, we'll be taking things even further. We'll come back with additional layers, glazing techniques, no pun intended, and smaller details that will add another level of depth and realism to these textures. Now I'm returning to that neutral tan mixture from earlier and adding a few small patches throughout the area. I'm continuing to work methodically, staying focused within this localized section and gradually building upon the foundation I've already established. Let me show you something real quick. I've put a little too much paint down in this area, so I'm taking a clean brush and carefully moving some of that excess paint into a nearby section that still needs coverage. This is a good reminder of how little paint is actually required when working at this level of detail. Small amounts go a long way, and it's always easier to add paint than it is to remove it. Now I continue placing these small patches and smudges throughout the upper section, following the same process that I used below. One advantage of working within this warm brown color family is that I don't always need to clean my brush completely between mixtures. Often I can simply introduce a small amount of another color from my palette and create the variation I'm looking for. This helps maintain efficiency while still giving me a wide range of color temperature and values. You could probably start to see the overall workflow developing. First, I'm creating these small mosaics of color and value across the surface. Then, once those individual shapes are in place, I carefully blend selected edges to create the subtle transitions found in the reference photo. This isn't particularly glamorous work. It requires patience, concentration, and a willingness to slow down and focus on very small decisions. Hyperrealism is often less about dramatic brushwork and more about making hundreds of accurate observations. It's also important to understand that a painting like this cannot be completed in a single session. Once this layer dries, we'll come back and continue refining the textures, adding more detail, adjusting values, and pushing the illusion even further. Alright, now it's time to move on to the next step. Before proceeding, make sure everything is completely dry. This stage relies on glazing, so having a dry surface is essential. For the glaze, I'm pouring out a small amount of Gamblin refined linseed oil. I'll use this medium by mixing a generous amount of it with a small amount of paint. This creates a semi-transparent layer over the paintings. The purpose of this glaze is to warm up the colors we've already established, giving the donut a richer, more inviting glow. It also helps unify all of the different textures we've painted so far. Be careful not to cover every area. Leave room for the additional glaze colors that I'll be using. Next, I'm mixing some darker brown tones and applying them to the upper areas to deepen the shadows. After that, I create a richer mixture of yellow ochre with a small amount of burnt sienna and sweep it along the sides. My goal here is to connect these translucent layers and create a smooth, natural gradient. Once the glazes are applied, I switch to a clean, dry brush with soft bristles and gently blend everything together. It's amazing how simple glazing could be, yet how dramatically it transforms a painting. In many ways, the glazing stage is where all the previous work begins to come together. Now that we've established those glazes, it's time to refine the textures even further. I return to my dark brown mixture and reinforce some of the darkest areas. All of those tiny holes and crevices within the breading need to maintain their depth and contrast. Even though we've just warmed everything up with the glazing, we still need those darker accents to preserve the form and realism. I do the same thing with the white paint, reinforcing any highlights that stand out across the breading. At this stage, use your paint sparingly. A very small amount can go a long way, especially once blending begins. The period while these glazes are still wet is particularly valuable. Since you're painting directly onto a wet surface, you can use this opportunity to seamlessly blend these new details into the existing layers. This helps create transitions that would be much more difficult to achieve once the paint has dried. Next, I mix a medium brown tone and begin adding textures to some of the larger shapes. There are countless tiny holes, cracks, and indentations throughout the breading, and during the earlier stages it wasn't possible to capture all of them accurately. This is one of the reasons layering is so important. As each layer builds upon the previous one, you're able to gradually refine the details and increase the level of realism. Once I have a sufficient amount of this new paint applied, I grab a clean, dry brush and begin blending. At this point, the process becomes much easier because these new marks are mostly isolated. You don't have to worry as much about neighboring colors contaminating one another. Notice how these dark accents blend naturally into the colors established in the previous layer. This integration is what gives the surface its depth and complexity. From here, I simply repeat the process, add selective touches of color to build texture throughout the breading, then blend and soften areas where necessary. By systematically layering and refining these details, the breading develops a much richer and more realistic appearance. After I've done enough painting and blending in this area, I let everything dry once again. Now that this layer is completely dry, I come back for another round of glazing and refinement. This time, I'm not glazing across the entire section. Instead, I'm working much more selectively, brightening certain areas while adding warmer tones to others. I really want that warm, golden glow inside the breading to stand out. Once those glazes are in place, I repeat the same process as before by adding microscopic textures throughout the breading. As I work, I'm constantly looking for any places where the current or previous glazes may have softened the texture or reduced its sense of depth. Whenever that happens, I rebuild those details one tiny stroke at a time. Now I want to spend some time on the left side. I haven't worked on this area in a while, and there are still plenty of spots that look too flat or what I like to call low resolution. By now, you've probably noticed the pattern. I glaze a section I want to improve, then I go back and refine the microscopic textures, gradually pushing the painting to a higher and higher level of detail. Here's a pro tip. When you're working on textures this small, don't rely only on sharp details. Use subtle smudges between colors that have similar values much more often than you might think. Those soft transitions help blend everything together, making the texture appear much more natural instead of looking grainy or noisy. The amount of work required to reach this level of detail is honestly mind-blowing. The time doesn't increase in a straight line, it increases exponentially. A painting with this level of microscopic detail can take many times longer than one that's simply painted with a respectable amount of realism. A lot of artists think spending dozens of hours on a painting is a huge commitment, and it certainly is. But when you find yourself spending 4 hours refining just a couple of square inches, it completely changes your perspective on what hyperrealism actually demands. With that said, I think I've shown enough to demonstrate how I begin building these microscopic textures inside the breading of a donut. I still have a little more work to do here. I'll probably add a glaze or two in certain areas before continuing to refine the details and finish the rest of this painting. I hope this demonstration has given you a better understanding of what's involved in creating hyper-realistic textures like these. If you found it helpful, be sure to like the video, and let me know in the comments what's the most time you've ever spent working on a single painting.